And we are live. Jared, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
I feel like we're twins. We're both Jared. We both have hats on. What's happening here?
Per se.
So you're joining us all the way from Chicago.
Yes.
And a quick reminder to everyone who's just joined us. Welcome to Pride in the Living Room. So this project was originally founded by the Israeli LGBT task force, Agudah, in memory of the 2009 Tel Aviv Gay Center shooting and the Jerusalem Pride Parade stabbing in 2015. And Ha'agudah created this project to offer a voice and a stage for LGBT Jews from around the world to share their stories, encouraging empathy and community. So all of that said, it is my pleasure to welcome Jared to share your story. Over to you.
Um, okay. Thank you. Wow. Um, wow, my story. Where do I even begin? I guess you say like Mary Poppins or whatever it is, where do you start from the very beginning or whatever? Um, However, my childhood in terms of being Jewish and gay, is not really all that interesting in terms of um, growing up Jewish. I didn't attend Hebrew school, so I wasn't. We occasionally went to a synagogue and temple, but not like really regularly. As you know, you probably imagine I grew up in the South, so this is not very common growing up in the Bible Belt. And I didn't really experience correlations, I guess, between being gay and being Jewish until I guess I was in college. And of course, in college, they say that you meet people from all over and you experience like more diversity and things. However, you're still in Eastern Kentucky, like when I went to college, so there's only so much diversity they have to offer. So I guess like when people found out like that I was Jewish, but it wasn't like I had it plastered on my forehead, but I guess it's like when people found out, they were more like, oh my gosh, that's so cool. And I was like, and I was kind of taken back because I was like, well, what do you mean like that's so cool? Like when you tell me you're Baptist or Catholic, like I don't really say that's so cool. It's just it's who you are, it's part of you and whatever. Um so that kind of continued on for like a few years and then I ended up going on the gay LGBTQIA plus birthright trip. Um and there I was just kind of like, okay, these are my peeps. Like I'm jiving with these peeps. Like there's no like awkwardness. Like there's no like weird moments here. And first of all, I vaguely knew what birthright was, but kind of like did some Googling and like, okay, like let's figure this out. Um, then I watched like some YouTube videos of like what we all go to Google and YouTube for everything, but YouTube videos of like, okay, like what's like been your experience and like your reviews and blah 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 blah. And this person, she's like, well, I met my husband on Birthright and I met my wife on Birthright. And I was like, okay, I'm not about to go get married on this trip. Now, wait a minute. Like, I'm just gonna go on this trip and like see what all this is about. And not about to like find a lover, not about to, but that kind of seemed like the overwhelming theme here. Like, I'm going to go to Israel for 14 days. And mind you, um, this was in January. So this was like Israeli winter. Um, and they're like, okay, we're just going to like, we're going to all be together and it's going to be cold there and we're all going to be like snuggled up together. I was like, okay, now wait a minute. Like, hold on now. Like, so anyway, went to Birthright. shared a lot of like interesting experiences with other people from New York, Seattle, Florida, I think, a couple from Chicago, um, one from Texas. Um, and it was just interesting hearing, it was kind of like the overwhelming, like ironic similarities between like our backgrounds. Like even though some people grew up very Orthodox, some did not grow up very Orthodox. It's just kind of their experiences intertwining in terms of being gay and dating and relationships as almost kind of the same in terms of navigating um like how you approach situations or how situations come to you, I guess. um so um and I would used to call it like our group therapy sessions, like we would have every night at Birthright, and some were better than others. But in all, like we got very close to one another, and we understood that, you know, we all have these commonalities. I never understood what the whole NJB, nice Jewish boy, like thing like meant. I had heard about it, but I didn't realize it was like this whole thing. I guess until like we all started sharing experiences, like, yeah, like people's told me that before, and this person's told me that before, and like my ex-boyfriend told me this before, and his mom told me that I was a NJB, and I was like, what? So Birthright was awesome. Got to connect with people. I actually met like my two best friends were like the three amigos through Birthright. One still lives in Israel. And fast forward to a few years, and then began dating. And then I would like be talking to a guy on a date, and he's like, "Oh, you're Jewish. Oh my gosh, that's so awesome. My mom told me that like I should date a Jewish boy." And I'm like, what does that even mean? Like, what is this criteria that like your mother's like, oh yeah, she says I need to meet a Jewish boy, so you're Jewish, so you must be a great guy. I was like, and literally one date, I was like, I could seriously be a serial killer, and you would not even like you're judging me based on my religion, not really who I am. Like you're saying that I'm a nice Jewish boy, but theoretically I could be like a narcissist and like whatever. And like, no, 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 like you're an NJB. And I'm like, okay, you totally don't get it. Like, okay, this is like really going nowhere. Um, so that was a one date. Then another date, they found out somehow or another I was Jewish, and they just wanted to talk about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. And I was like, we're definitely not talking about this on a first date. This is not happening. Like, no. And they're like, well, I just want to know your stance. I was like, well, okay, well, this is definitely not going to happen on our first date. Like, no, we're not going to discuss that. And they're like, and this is like even before the first entree, like at least let me get to dessert before you at least like start like inching your way into like those sorts of like topics. But it's even like more weird like on Tinder, like when you're swiping and I've had J swipe, and I was like, okay, hardly anybody's on J swipe these days, but anyway, back to Tinder. So swiping on Tinder, and then you're like, oh my gosh, you're Jewish, and I've been looking for a nice Jewish boy. And I'm like, again, here we go. Like, what is with the taglines of NJB? And like, I really like don't get it. I don't get why it's like, oh, like I found one. Like, I really don't understand. Um, and it seems like I think the older I get, I'm not as more forward with it unless people ask about it. But just because I don't want those conversations to happen, or I don't want it to become a topic of conversation in the forefront versus who I am. Yes, it's a part of who I am, but like I'd like the date to get to know my personality. Like when we're starting to talk about second, third, fourth dates and like getting more serious, then we can start kind of intertwining those things. But like first date right off the bat, like boom, I found a Jewish boy, and I'm like, okay, like you make it like you found like the needle in the haystack, like you won the prize today at elementary school. Like I don't know what to tell you. Like congratulations, or this is a little weird. Like I don't know. So yeah, I don't know, that's kind of like navigating like me like being Jewish and navigating like figuring out like how to intertwine like dating life and how other people like perceives it and how I perceive it, I guess. So I don't know, like
Well, thank you so much, Jared, for giving us the overview into your life, your
yeah,
Jewish gay experience. I wrote so many things down. I have a couple of questions, if that's okay.
go for it, yeah.
Goodness. Well, it's interesting. It seems to me that a theme to your life, or at least a theme to what you've chosen to talk about, is that uh, your Jewishness, your Jewish identity is is strengthened or sort of comes to the forefront when you're in environments where there isn't much Judaism going around. Like, for example,
Absolutely.
yeah, go ahead.
No, absolutely. Like, um, I've noticed it more where, you know, you're right, where there's not really much Judaism going around, where in other settings or social circles, in more prevalent um, prevalence with Judaism, be it New York, be it Israel, whatnot, no one just, obviously Israel, but no one just cares. It's just like, okay, whatever, like, what are we having for dinner tonight? But versus Kentucky, or really even Chicago, some, California, it's just, you know, I don't know. It's just, it's not a, I guess in the least common areas, people are more like, oh, that's cool. It's out of their norm, I guess. And they don't know. I don't know if it's they don't know how to respond to it or if it's they don't know how to react to it. I don't know.
Hmm. Yeah, it is interesting the way you spoke about, being the one Jewish kid in the bagel belt, then also being the one Jewish guy on Tinder. It seems like you have a similar kind of reaction where people are sort of fetishizing your culture and sort of really intrigued. And how does that make you feel?
Um, for me, it's kind of it's annoying in some aspects because it's just like, you know, I love my identity and who I am and everything, but at the same time, it's like there's so much more to me than this one aspect of me. Like keep digging, like keep on. But it's like they get to that point, they stop and they're just like, oh my gosh, like there's this Jewish boy and blah 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 blah. Like I'm like, okay, can we keep going? Can we get past this? Like, can we talk about something else? Like, okay, I like Broadway, I like Disney. Like, you know, can we keep going here? Like, I like Orange Theory workouts. Like, can we keep going? Like, nope, we're gonna stop right there for like a good 20 or 30 minutes, and we gotta investigate this. And I'm like, okay, it gets kind of annoying, but I think now I've just kind of gotten used to it, and I'm just kind of like, okay, like here we go again, like okay, like how long is this gonna take? Okay, we're gonna talk about this for 15 minutes. Okay, great. Now we can talk about what Broadway musicals I like. Now we can talk about like what Disney films I like. Now we can talk about like, you know, things I do for work, like things like that. I'm just kind of used to it by now.
Hmm. I've done many of these interviews for Pride in the Living Room, and a common theme is that a lot of people tell me that they don't sort of mention their Jewishness, regardless of how where they sit on the spectrum. They choose not to mention it or choose not to talk about it. So I think it's a really beautiful, interesting story that where you've had such a rich experience, um, you know, bringing your culture, religion into the gay dating world and sort of seeing how that plays out. I think that's really fascinating. So thank you for sharing that.
Absolutely.
Uh, so going back to birthright, uh,
Yes.
there are many LGBT plus people, Jews in the world, who maybe have or have not heard of birthright. Can you give
Okay.
a quick overview of what that's all about?
So I was kind of one of those that didn't really know what it was about in general. So I kind of kept seeing the Facebook ads for it, and it was like Tagleet and Birthright, and I kept scrolling, kept seeing, and then I looked at YouTube videos and their online website. So basically, what it is it's a 14-day trip to Israel. All expenses paid. You just get yourself to whichever airport your trip is starting at. So mine was starting at Newark, New Jersey. So I got myself there. And then after that, besides like spending money and things, everything else is paid for 14 days. It's a cultural trip to bring Jews back to Israel, and you get to it. So we started in obviously Tel Aviv for the first night just because the flight got in late, and then we immediately went to Galilee. Trust me, they're not going to leave the gays LGBTIA plus in Tel Aviv the first night. They're going to wait and do that the last night. I guess they've learned from experience. So anyway, they stayed in Galilee, and then we went to Svat, Haifa. Then we went to the Negev, the Dead Sea. So you're like all around Israel seeing these sites, and you're kind of exploring like who you are and how your Jewish faith, whether it be Orthodox, whatever or not, whatever spectrum you are, it's completely individualized, but you're also doing this with a group. It's an individual journey, but you're also supporting and you're with other people. I chose to do the LGBT one just because I felt like I would get more out of it being with people that are LGBT with me, and we're kind of going along this whole experience as LGBT Jews together. But there are many different versions that you can do. That if you're like really into cooking and chef and whatnot, there's a total like foodie one. There's like an outdoorsy one. There's just many different ones that you can choose to do. I highly recommend it. If I could, I would do it again. Now I'm too old and I've already done it once. But if I could, I wish I could do it again, knowing what I know now and like my experience is getting older, and to go back and get more out of it. But that's okay. But I would totally recommend it for anybody.
I have my own Tuckley's experience, but this is your story, so I won't go into it. But I wish I had known there was an LGBT. Do you know the name of the organization or the group that was running it?
I would have to go back and look it up, and then I can send you the information.
Sure,
Let me
yeah.
do some digging, and then I will send it for you. But this has been like 7 years ago ish, something like that. But yeah, I will do some digging, and then I will send it to you.
Yeah, definitely. I know a lot of it. If it's only open to Americans, then I'm sure we could still sneak a couple of international people on the trip.
I don't know why not. The more the merrier.
Yeah. I mean, we'll have to wait till,
Well, of course, until after COVID and the borders reopen. But yeah.
Oh, yeah. uh, so I will mention as well, if you're looking for a similar experience, I personally went on a trip to Argentina. It was run by JDC Entwine and JQ International,
Okay.
and it was sort of a youth leadership trip to sort of explore the intersection of Jewish queer identity. So if you were looking for a similar experience post birthright, then that's something
Right.
you could look into.
Perfect. Okay.
I'll send you the deets.
We'll exchange. Yes.
Look at this. This is the
I'll dig up the
Jared's.
birthright.
You know, whenever two Jareds meet and they're both wearing caps, they have to have an exchange of ideas and contact. It's just how the world works.
Absolutely. And here we are.
So, uh, nice Jewish boy. What
Yes, the
what does that
NJB.
what does NJB mean to you?
Well, okay, so for the majority of the time of me hearing that, it's just automatically an eye roll. I'm just like, oh, okay, all right, here we go. Like, I mean, I honestly like don't even know where the term started. I don't know like how this like originated, like because you don't hear the nice Catholic boy, the nice Christian boy, the nice Hindi boy. You don't hear these, or the nice Buddhist boy. Like you don't hear the nice Muslim boy. You don't hear these. Like I just hear, oh, NJB, NJB, NJB. I'm like, okay, like it's just more like, okay, like are you making this an adjective about me, or is like this supposed to be a compliment? Like where are you going with this? And they're like, oh no, no, like you're just a nice Jewish boy. I was like, okay, first of all, you know nothing about me. Second of all, you just know that I'm Jewish. So are you just equating just because I'm Jewish now I'm an NJB? Like, is that where we're going here? um I've even seen on like someone's Tinder profile, and I shouldn't say this, but I immediately swiped left just because it kind of annoyed me. But it was just kind of like looking for NJB, and I had like the Star of David emoji, and I was like, I cannot. Like, you're just looking for someone Jewish, but you're not diving deeper in terms of like their qualities and like who they are and wanting to get to know the person. Like, okay, it's great if you want to find someone who's Jewish, but let's list some other qualities that you're looking for or who you are. But literally the tagline only said their name, their age, and then a little description at the bottom said looking for NJB, Star of David emoji. And I was like, okay. But it's it's just become more of an eye roll to me. Like, okay, it's cute, it's funny, let's keep it moving. Like, all right, next, like type of thing. That's kind of how I view it. I don't know where it came from. I don't know exactly like what context that it means or anything. So I don't know.
What does Judaism mean to you these days?
Oh, okay. Um, so that's a very broad question. Um, so what does it mean to me? I think like for me personally, it is more of traditions, values, and morals that I personally hold myself to, um, and like morals and values that I choose to live by. Um, I am I'm not Orthodox, but for me, that's kind of what it means to me right now.
Hmm. And talk to us about so how do you express your gay identity?
Just in general, or being Jewish, or all the above, or just me being gay?
Um, let's start with, I mean, we can talk about the other question in a second, but
Okay.
so sort of day to day, year to year, how does Jared be gay?
Um, um, I mean, hmm, like I'm just like me. Like I just do my thing. Like Like I do go to the Pride events. I support all of the Pride events. Like I'm out at the bars, I'm out meeting people. Um, I'm out, I guess, if that's like what we're getting at. Like if people ask, or if people have questions, or if people like, whatever, I have no problem with that. Um, so yeah, I'm like, funny, occasionally sassy, like that's me.
Okay, okay. And so gayness and Jewishness, how have they sort of come together over the years, or not?
Um, at first, I had a lot of questions as far as like how I would be viewed in the Jewish community. Um, However, I think a lot of my questions got answered in terms of that actually on Birthright by a gay rabbi in Israel. And we were like discussing like, how we're viewed and, you know, things like that in terms of families and, possibly like having children as gay couples and LGBT couples and things like that. And, my questions were answered then. And it was just like, okay, so like nothing's really going to change for me. Like I'm still going to be who I am. I'm still going to be viewed the same way. And, you know, his best advice, he was just like, just be who you are. And that's the best thing that you can do for yourself. And, that's what I chose to do. And that's, and he's like, religion is something that, you interpret yourself. However, we also have these morals and values that we live by. But at the same time, you have to figure out what's best for you in terms of that values, those morals and living. And he's like, look at me. I'm a gay rabbi practicing in Israel. He's like, you cannot get much closer to being Jewish and gay than this. And he's like, trust me, like you're not gonna be, your view is not gonna be changed. He's like, occasionally from the older generation, you might get a couple like eye rolls or eye looks or whatever. He's like, but that's nothing different than what you experience now in the States. And it has nothing to do with your religion. It's just because you're gay. So being like now, like that I've had like all my questions answered, it's it doesn't really intertwine. Like, I mean, I view them kind of separately for me. Like, I'm gay, I'm Jewish. It's just it's another piece of my puzzle. Like, I'm it doesn't really affect me positively or negatively. Like, or not, I shouldn't say not positively, but not negatively, I'll say that.
Mm. Have you thought about whether you would like to date someone Jewish?
I get asked that question a lot. I am not opposed to it. I am. I will say this. I'm not actively looking for another Jewish person. Like I'm not going to be on the prowl like for an NJB. Like only NJBs like swiping right. Like okay, not quite like that. However, um, I think it would just like be the icing on the cake or the cherry on the top of the ice cream cone if I found a nice Jewish guy to date and one day married. I'm not opposed to it. If it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't. I'm not solely looking for one. I'm not, not looking for one either. So,
Mm. What does Kentucky mean to you?
um, Kentucky for me, um, actually, I was there a couple weeks ago, but Kentucky for me is like it's home, even though I don't live there anymore. I actually didn't fly this time just because the whole COVID and everything. I don't want to deal with the airports and whatnot. But um, I was driving home, and it's about a 5.5 hour drive, which is like right at my threshold for like driving trips. I'm like, I cannot do a little more than this. Like my playlist is getting a little bare bones by the time I get home. Um, but you know, there's a long bridge, and they call it the singing bridge because the way the bridge is like designed, it's like holes in the bridge along it when you're driving. So your tires, like when you're driving, it sings. It doesn't really sing, but it does make a sound, but they call it the singing bridge. Anyway, it's a bridge going from Indiana to Kentucky. And on the bridge, there's this huge sign that says, "Welcome to Kentucky." And I'm like, I just kind of get like this sigh of relief. I'm like, like I'm home. Like, you know, and from the bridge, it's like an hour and a half drive for me home. And I'm like, okay, bitches, like I've made it 5.5 hours. I can make it another hour and a half and I will be home. Like I am almost there. But yeah, it's home for me. Like the scenery is completely different from here. It's like horse farms, it's greenery, it's like the bluegrass state. It's just like me like driving 70 miles an hour on the back roads, like going down like windy country roads, farm roads and things. And I'm like, okay, I know where everything is in this town. Everyone knows me here, Southern Hospitality, like I know them, sort of thing. And then I come back to Chicago and I'm like, okay, concrete jungle, and I'm just like a person dropped in the middle of the city. Like I have my friends here and I know people here, but it's just like I can't go to the corner grocery store and be like, oh, hey, how are you? How's your kids doing? Like, oh, isn't your kid like graduating high school next year? Blah, blah, blah. Like, you just know everybody because I came from a very, very, very small town. But it's home. It's home. Like, would I see myself living there and um, like marrying there and settling down there? Absolutely not. But um, I always love to go back and visit, and obviously my family's there, so I have to come back occasionally.
I have one more question, if that's okay.
Sure.
So I'd like to go back, all the way back to the beginning.
Okay.
Um, Not back to your bris. We'll go a bit further forward than that.
Yeah.
Um, so we didn't actually dive into this too much, but you know, you grew up in Kentucky in
Uh-huh.
this Jewish environment, and you reached a moment where you realized that you were different,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and you're you're starting to put the pieces of the puzzle together, your sexuality, your culture,
Mm-hmm.
and in this small town, um,
Right.
in this, you know, and you were sort of. Before I ask my question, do you have any thoughts on that experience?
Um, I mean, not really. Like as far as like growing up and knowing like I was different and like in terms of like being Jewish and things, I kind of like discovered it pretty quickly. Um, growing up in the Bible Belt and going to elementary school and like everyone celebrating their Christmas breaks and having Santa come and Christmas trees. And I was like, and when I was in preschool and kindergarten, I was like, you know, okay. And then, you know, going home and my parents like, no, 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 we have Hanukkah and whatnot. And I was like, okay, but okay, like we're going to celebrate Hanukkah at school. And they're like, no, you're not. Like, no, you won't. Like, you'll have probably Christmas parties and you can have the cupcakes and whatever you want to do, but you're not going to have like Hanukkah parties. They're not going to play dreidels and whatever. And I was like, okay. So I was actually surprised. I was probably in the third grade, and I really remember this for some reason. And I actually told my music teacher this like years later, but I was in music class and it was like November-ish, late November. Um, and it was like the little kiddie songs you do in music class in elementary school. And all of a sudden, like, oh, dreidel, dreidel, dreidel. I was like, really? Wait a minute. Like, we're really playing the dreidel song in the middle of the Bible Belt? Like, wait a minute. And it took me years later to realize like how a pivotal moment for me that was. But I was like, okay, I'm like, I got this. Like, let's do this. And she had a dreidel, and she was like, does anybody know how to play dreidels? I was like, yeah, I know how to play dreidels. I was like, I'm not good at it, but I know how to play it. So, like, I was showing the class like how to play the dreidels and like what the game is and everything. And she's like, oh, okay. Well, then that was like really the pivotal moment. I think for me, I was like, these kids really have no idea. Like, they just think this is a cute song and a cute game. And I'm like, they really don't know like what this like in terms of like for me that means. To them it means nothing. It's a cute song they're learning today and the game, but for me in terms it meant a whole lot more. And I think I knew I was different, but it just kind of like solidified it. I was like, okay, yes, you are. And then years later was it was kind of like, okay, you're gay now, you're different, you like boys, you like penis, great, we've established this. And then like, you know, that sort of thing. So I mean, yeah, I knew I was different, but I think that's also part of the reason for me why I know that I will never like settle down there, because I know that it's it's very conservative, and it's not the most open-minded place. I've never personally experienced any like bullying or hate or anything like that, but I just know that settling down in terms of a couple and things is just not like what I want to do. So,
Mm. My final question to you, Jared.
yeah.
So, you know, in being that kid who sort of came out as Jewish in that Christian environment, and then years later came out as gay in a Jewish environment, or in the, you know, in the Kentucky environment, the small town world.
Hmm.
Um, you know, and all these years later, where you know, you're living in Chicago and you've traveled around the States and you went to Israel and you had that incredible conversation with the gay rabbi, and all the wisdom that you've gained over your journey. If you had a chance to speak to him, what would you say?
To the gay rabbi?
First, what would you say to the gay rabbi? Yes.
Okay. Um, I mean, he and I like we still like we became Facebook friends, and we still like converse like back and forth occasionally, like checking in on one another and things like that. Um, and I've told him countless times it's almost kind of like a repeat of the same conversation in a sense, but I've told him like, you know, thank you so much for like broadening my horizons and not like, you know, allowing like fears to suppress myself, I guess. And fears of like how I would be judged or how I'd be viewed at X, Y, you know, X, Y, and Z. Um, but and you know, he's just like, anything I can do for you, let me know. Any questions you have, like no matter what they are. Um, he's like, I'm married now and we have a kid, and I'm like, oh wow, okay, like so he's like, I kind of like all aspects. He's like, I won't judge you. So he's just very like he's almost kind of like a big brother in a way, but like, you know, we're not that close in terms of like a relationship, but um it's just somebody that like, you know, you can count on, and you can like chat, message back and forth and just say, you know, hey, like how's it going? And he's just like, anything I can do for you, please let me know. Like, so I'm always like appreciative and supportive and thank him, you know, for the wisdom and the support that he's given and things like that. So
It's really beautiful. Um, I was going to ask you something else, but I think that might be the perfect way to end our time together. Um,
okay.
no, I mean, do you want to talk about something else, or?
I I think I've kind of, I don't know, I think I've kind of hit all, I don't know, all the spots or whatever. But um, if you had any more, I'm open to sharing, or whatever. So
Well, as I said at the beginning, I think that your story is so incredible because um, your identity as a Jew and as a gay man have really come to the forefront because they're because it stands out, because it's the one example in it's the one needle in the haystack, as you said.
right.
And I think the you've had a chance for your identities to flourish because they are in opposition to the environments that you've been in. And I think that that's really meaningful to so many of the people I've spoken with. They've grown up in full-on Jewish environments. They've only known Jews. They've gone to Jewish schools, and so their Jewish identity has really become quite subtle and quite hidden. And I think it's really beautiful to hear your story where, after all these years, even though you've had questions and you've had difficult conversations, it sounds like um, the values and the uh, the guiding light of Judaism has still carried you through.
Mm-hmm.
And the same with your gay identity, that has had a chance to flourish because there was a time when you were the only gay in the village, you know?
Right. Right.
Do you have any thoughts on that or?
Um, there's always the quote that, it takes a village, and, that quote like means so many different things to so many different people, and it can be used in different contexts. Many people use it, well, it takes a village to raise a kid. Okay, well, however, that's true. But for me, it's like it just takes a village in terms of, yes, you are your own individual person. However, everyone needs some sort of support system, whether it, and if you are a gay individual, LGBT individual, you do need like a support system surrounding you that are within your own community. So it does take a village in a sense.
Beautifully said. I want to thank you again, Jared, other Jared. Maybe I'm the other Jared.
Yes, whichever, whichever.
I feel like doing the ET,
Right.
I want to thank you again, Jared, for being here with us at Pride in the Living Room. I think your story is so incredibly rich and important for both our religious Jewish, Orthodox Jewish audience and also for our LGBT audience. So thank you so much for being here.
Absolutely.
And there's only one thing left for me to say.
Okay.
Here's to sharing our story in this moment and many more moments in the future. Thank you, Jared.
Absolutely. Thank you.